basically, and Africa. So, I mean, he was the guy who was sitting on this huge, set of power interests that caused him then to, for example, to insist that the al-Maliki regime had to give up its demand for a timetable for U.S. withdrawal from Iraq. He did that after he was out of CENTCOM, but he was acting on behalf of the military leadership, which of course has a huge vested interest in the status quo in terms of holding on to every base they can. That is the measure of their power, and they are naturally going to try to maximize that power, and in so doing, they have to be in conflict with every nationalist in the Middle East, and thus put at risk the real security of Americans.
This is something that Chalmers Johnson addresses at length in his second book, Sorrows of Empire, or second book in the Blowback trilogy, Sorrows of Empire. He talks a lot about this, about how the military bases created around the world in the Cold War, that they have found any and every excuse. And, of course, we can all think of, cocaine trafficking and whatever bogus excuses like that. But, I forget now the litany of ridiculous excuses that these people come up with just to keep their bases open, no matter where they are, at any cost.
Right. And of course, I mean, the classic example of what I'm talking about here, the one that I love to talk about more than anything else, and I was able to catch Robert Kagan at a meeting in which he spoke publicly some months ago on this point. This is the U.S. military presence and bases in Saudi Arabia after the Cold War. Now, the excuse for keeping bases in Saudi Arabia, of course, was to enforce the no-fly zone in Iraq. So one thing leads to another, and, you have a structure where, one part of the empire justifies another part.
Of course, that was why Osama bin Laden, the main reason that he cited, in fact, his fatwa, I think both of them, or at least, I forget if it was the 96 or the 98 Declaration of War, was entitled The Declaration of War Against the Americans Occupying the Land of the Two Holy Places.
Precisely.
That was his biggest beef.
This was so obviously a violation of the Islamic pride and concern about their holy places that only, a strong vested interest with no concern about anything else would have stood in the way of a decision to get out of those bases.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because what he was trying to do really was not scare us away. He was trying to kick our ass not just into gear but into overdrive, so that not only would we come and attempt to imperially dominate the Middle East and put our combat forces within rifle range, but overdo it to such an extent that we completely bankrupt ourselves. That way we could be forced out of the entire region permanently, and we've done exactly what he wanted us to do. You got 30 seconds.
Right. So I said to Kagan, well, would you still justify the decision to keep bases in Saudi Arabia, despite the fact that we know that this was the reason that bin Laden was both determined to target U.S. Interests throughout the Middle East, and particularly in Saudi Arabia, but a large part of the reason why he was successful in that? And basically said yes, of course.
Of course. Yeah. What's if you stirred up Muslims? That's how Brzezinski put it. Empire has winners and losers. The winners are those who have a vested interest in those bases. The losers are the rest of us. Yeah, exactly. All right, that's it. We're all out of time. Thanks very much. Gareth Porter. It's antiwar.com/Porter. Thanks, man.
Good to be with you again.